So I'm very inspired by ravens, and they're beautiful to recreate in multiple formats. And so I knew I wanted to design a piece that was very theatrical and very performance wearable. Cynthia Gibson here. My husband Keith and I are the owners of the Stone Lantern House in magical Sitka, Alaska. We're committed to overcoming limiting beliefs by using creativity, art, and action. Welcome to Stone Lantern House. To be featured on the cover of Alaska magazine is a dream I didn't even know I had. This came out of the blue, out of nowhere. Never in my life did I think, you know what, I'm gonna try to get a piece of one of my wearable arts images on a magazine cover. About 5 months ago, I got called and informed that my image was chosen for the cover of Alaska magazine because they did a feature article about a fashion show in Alaska that happens every year in Anchorage. And I happened to have 2 pieces at that fashion show. They took images of my 2 pieces and they end up being the ones they use most in a lot of their promotions. And so when Alaska magazine, I guess, was doing the article and they were looking at images for their cover, they chose this particular image. This piece represents ravens. And of course in Southeast Alaska and around the world, ravens are everywhere, but especially here, they have a spiritual meaning, that they're a moiety for the local native Tlinkits. And so I'm very inspired by ravens, and they're beautiful to recreate in multiple formats. And so I knew I wanted to design a piece that was very theatrical and very performance wearable. So I wanted the artist to be able to move a lot, and also for there to be sound and sort of drama in the piece. And so I used vinyl records and cut them out and used those as feathers. And so you can see it's real shiny, and when she danced it would be real clackety because the records would knock together. She has an arm over here which you can't really see too much, but those have big long feathers on there on her arm. And then this arm has a puppet, big raven puppet on the end of it. And the puppet doesn't move its mouth or anything, but it was like just a prop for her to dance around with. And then I made a big headpiece that has this sort of puffy drama. And it was really fun because I got dancers as my models. I had 2 different models on this one at 2 different shows. And they both did a fabulous job of really evoking that sort of raven attitude with sort of, you know, sassy and fun and very bird-like. The fashion show in Alaska that featured this last in 2019 was the first year that this particular show is trying to promote and uplift and bring awareness to Alaska designers, fashion designers. And in that, they decided to mix in wearable art designers. And so they contacted me to say, oh, please, do you have something that you could bring? Because I had recently in 2017, I'd had a dress that I had made completely out of salmon vertebrae that kind of went viral around the state because it was so unique and different and beautiful. And it was such a piece that got so much attention and so much love in Alaska that the Fairbanks Museum of the North actually contacted me and purchased it from me because they wanted a contemporary representation of Southeast Alaskan people with nature and how they interact. And a lot of the bones on that dress I collected right off our beaches because the salmon spawn here, they die, they get washed up on the beach, they decompose, and they leave their bones behind for people like me to pick up and make stuff with. But I'm one of the only crazy ones that actually did it. So it was a lot of work. It was about 5 months of just stringing bones. And I'm not talking about the collecting of them, the cleaning of them, the sorting of them. That took forever. I also went to the local seafood processor and got a fish tote full of king salmon and got all those bones. Thank goodness that I wouldn't have had enough bones had it not been for them. And then my family helped a lot, stringing bones. I would have stringing parties We strung over 20,000 bones on that dress. So, and the cool thing about it is now I'm inspired. I actually want to make a chandelier to put back here in my stairwell with mostly fish bones. We'll see how that's going to turn out, but I'm still designing it. Well, museums are known to loan their things out to go on travel displays and stuff. So when the trend show, fashion show in Anchorage, who accepted this piece for me to bring up and show there, and they asked if there'd be any way for me to bring my bone dress. And I said, well, I don't own it anymore, but we can certainly ask the Museum of the North if they'd be willing to loan it to us, and we could then, you know, promote them and explain, you know, tell the story of how it's there and why it's there. And they agreed to it. And so they sent it down on Alaska Airlines. I flew up to Anchorage on Alaska Airlines. I met it there, and it was carefully packaged. And then I got a model from the local dance group in town for that dress and this dress. I like to use dancers as models because I think that can really make an impact. In wearable art, if you have a little bit of a performance with the music, with your piece, it can make a big difference. It's not just a fashion show where you're looking at the items. It's oftentimes there's a lot of performance involved. And so anyway, then we had my bone dress there. But ironically at the time, because once I make my pieces, I'm ready. They're like a teenager at the end. It's like, okay, go out, get a job, get your own apartment, pay your own bills, and do your own laundry. I don't need to be taking care of you anymore. And that's kind of how I felt about my bone dress. So it was certainly fun to visit with it, meet it there in Anchorage, but I was like more enamored and more fascinated and more into my Raven outfit at the time. And so I was really pleased that it got some notoriety as well for the Alaska cover. Super happy that I'm continuing on. It's only giving me more energy and more excitement to make my next piece, which I'm currently working on. You know, my favorite thing, somebody pointed it out to me when I'm doing any kind of art. They took note that I like to do lots of things, small things in multiples. And in nature, I think that's what's so fascinating. When you see a lot of small things in multiples. You can see tons of pine needles on a tree makes a beautiful tree. Leaves on a tree makes a beautiful tree. You know, sand on the beach or many, many shells all together, those multiples. So I'm interested in how can I recreate that using natural materials. I love using natural materials, and I'm just most inspired by them. And so, and it's also in great abundance here. It's not something I have to go buy, and that's something else I feel strongly about. I don't want to have to buy a lot of my material. I want to use what I have here, whether it's something from the recycle center, like a literal plastic container that I can cut up and make something out of, or it can be a piece of bark from a tree, or it can be a salmon bone from the beach. And so when I can find those materials, and they're free here and in abundance, especially salmon or fish parts, halibut and salmon especially, the vertebrae are just, they're beautiful in shape and size and design already by themselves. Now, how can I take that and elevate it in a way that people feel like, oh, that's something familiar. I think I know what that is. A lot of times people will ask me, because I have a lot of earrings that I've made with salmon bones, is that a shell? What is that? And I'll show it to them closely and I'll say, well, what do you think it is? You've seen this before. And then they look close, and a lot of times, especially they're from Alaska, they can recognize it's a salmon bone. Not so much if I travel in the lower 48. Why do I like to help other artists, or what is it about helping other artists? Well, I like to help people in general. My favorite thing is to help people do something they never thought they could do. Because I've been there. I hope we've all been there, and that we've learned that, hey, the only thing holding us back from creating the life that we want or creating the thing that's in our head that we want to put out there, whether it's a dinner or a poem or a macrame piece or a piece of sculpted clay or a painting or anything, or a clean house. Maybe that's what you feel passionate about. Whatever your passion is, that if you can think it, you can achieve it. And so I love to help people realize that it's possible. And it just so happens I'm also a financial advisor, and so I have a lot of background in numbers and how to, work with cash flow and how to be profitable, and had a lot of business training. And so because of that, I know as an artist, a lot of times you don't have those backgrounds. Maybe all you're really focused on and interested in is the creating of your art, which you can't do unless you can support yourself financially. And so then time becomes a factor. And so I'm very interested in trying to take a few local artists under my wing and helping them to learn those skills, and also facilitating that so that they can create pieces of art. Because it's also very fun to collaborate, that you can learn a lot by being around other artists and seeing how they would do something. Like, what are you gonna do with fish bones? And what are you gonna do with a salmon skin that I would never think of because I'm not you? And so that can be very inspiring, and also help you take your own art to the next level. I think in part why my art has been successful is because I don't have an expectation of selling it. I don't have an expectation. It has no strings attached. I'm just truly doing things that I am inspired by, or I want to create. And because that's like at its core, just coming from a place of joy and inspiration and creativity, it naturally then became something that people love. I think, if you come at art with, I've got to make this business, I've got to make it profitable, then it kind of takes that joy away. And I think that might be why people get derailed. If for somehow you can really come with thinking, in 5 years from now, if I could make something that, moves me, then what would that look like? What can I do that's just unique, original, outside the box? All that would be good.